Hi, so this is the fourth of the climate change videos, and this one is going to look at the consequences of climate change, or what the impact could be, both globally, on the UK also, but also in the specification, it does require you to know how climate change can impact coastlines and managing coast. So we will look at our coast case study, Barton-on-Sea, and look at the impact climate change has on managing that coastline. Okay, so this world map shows you the global impact of climate change, and of course impact is not just positive, it can be negative as well. You might want to pause at this point so you can have a look, and I'm not going to read all of these out, but you will see. So an increase in temperature, for example, will give us an increase in the parts of the world that experience the disease malaria from mosquitoes. Mosquitoes that carry malaria will be going further north and south than they normally are. In moderate temperatures like the UK, you will possibly see an increase in crop yields because crops grow when the temperatures are increasing. Obviously, you'll get a sea level rise and changing sea temperature, and that might decrease the amount of fish in some parts. You're going to get glacial melting like we talked about before. You will have a loss of biodiversity in some areas. Biodiversity is the number of species that you find within an ecosystem, because the temperatures change and these animals and plants are not used to these temperatures. You may see an increase in illness and death because higher temperatures normally causes diseases that cause diarrhea and ultimately death if that is bad enough. In the Himalayas, the glaciers are going to melt and you're going to see more flooding as a result of that melting. Which will impact a large number of people. Great Barrier Reef down in Australia is going to have a loss of biodiversity. You are going to have areas that have more heat waves, and we have certainly experienced those in the past summers. And that might increase tourism in some areas and decrease it in others. So there's certainly large parts of the Mediterranean this year that have almost been too hot, and there's been a high number of wildfires, particularly in Greece in this area, as a result of these increasing temperatures. And I talked about increasing tropical storms because of the higher sea temperatures. This will also be another global impact. So there's multiple impacts you can see there, both positive and negative, as a result of climate change. Okay, and this is a map of the UK and the likely impact of climate change on the UK. And you can see that there are positives and negatives. In yellow here, you've got the positives, and in green, we've got some negatives. So it might be that the increase in temperature means that Southern Europeans might come on holiday to the UK, believe it or not, to escape the heat that they're experiencing themselves. It might be that we have parts of the country that increase crop yields are experienced. So farmers will be making more money in places like Northern England and Scotland, because the increased temperatures mean that they can grow more crops. And then there's the obvious negatives. You will get more flooding. We're getting a lot of I'm doing this video in December 2023, and we are getting a huge amount of rain, and that could be as a result of the increased air temperatures, and that flooding is going to cost huge amounts of money in repairs and damage, estimated at a cost of £12 billion. And then you'll get more weather extremes. So in the summer, we may well get more heat and longer periods of drought and hose pipe bans. And also, leading on to my next slide, we will have to increase the amount of money that we spend on sea defences, because as an island, as you can see, if the sea levels are rising, we are going to have to spend more money on things like seawalls. But feel free to pause this slide, because there are multiple impacts on both gains and losses on this diagram that I've just put across on, so that you can get a bit of an idea of what impact climate change will have on our country. Okay, and just very briefly, this is Barton-on-Sea, and what sorts of management is being put in place at Barton-on-Sea to stop both coastal flooding, but also to stop the cliff from eroding. And we know, because it's one of our case studies, that the sea level at Barton is rising on average by 4 millimetres per year. That means that the sea, and I'll do it in blue for effect, is just eating a little bit higher up the cliff each year. And so that means that the money that is being spent at Barton-on-Sea on coastal management defences is almost defunct and a waste of money, because the sea will overtop these defences and mean that they are just not effective. So global climate change and the rising sea levels is having a big impact on councils and how much money they are having to spend on stopping the sea from eroding cliffs, but also stopping the sea from flooding areas. If you spend billions of pounds on a sea wall, you're going to be a little bit upset if you spent a lot of money on that, if sea levels rise and that seawall just overtops really easily. So you can see the dilemma that councils face. Sea level rise is definitely having an impact on how coastal areas in the UK are managed.